Florida is a very tough team to predict. On one hand, we know the Gators are loaded with 4- and 5-star talent, but on the other hand, the Gators are coming off back-to-back losing seasons, now only return 11 starters, have major quarterback questions, and face an absolutely brutal schedule. And I'm afraid that things may have to get worse before they get better in Gainesville. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. We're so glad that you could join us today as we get ready to break down everything you need to know about the Florida Gators heading into this upcoming season. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the country, beating out over 80% of the national analysts and handicappers each of the last 5 years. So if you want a place where you know you can get a guaranteed winning record, a place where you know you can win some guaranteed money, this is the place for you because we can guarantee that. Go sign up today over on thegridironexpert.com. Make sure to check out our Patreon account for exclusive college football content year-round. Become a member of our Patreon Wall of Fame to access that content, of course. And check out our mailing address. Send us some gear to be represented in every single Gridiron Expert video. Would love to represent your team in our backgrounds. We continue to expand that and expand our GE Nation from coast to coast. Make sure to go check it out. Get it over to us before the season gets going. So let's take a look at Florida, guys. Year one under Billy Napier was less than ideal. A lot of people thought that it might be better than expected with that big upset win over Utah in week one, and then kind of came crashing back down to reality in week two when they got beat by 10 points against Kentucky. The Gators ultimately finished 2022 at 6-7, a blowout loss to Oregon State in the Las Vegas Bowl. Did have, unfortunately, 3 one-possession losses, though. One of those to Vanderbilt, another one to Florida State as well. So, you know, the talent was there for Florida to have a better record than they ended up with, but back-to-back 6 and 7 seasons in Gainesville, it's not cutting it. They need to get back. They want to contend for SEC titles. They want to contend for national championships. I'm afraid this year might not be that year. Take a look at the offense. Anthony Richardson is gone. He was phenomenal at times last year and frustrating at times last year, but obviously the Indianapolis Colts thought he was more phenomenal than anything else, getting selected number 4 overall in last month's or a couple months NFL draft. You look at the offense, guys, with Anthony Richardson gone, Florida has major quarterback questions. Who's it going to be? I think a lot of us believe it's going to be Graham Mertz, the highly touted recruit, now transferring in from Wisconsin, where he had 32 starts with the Badgers, over 5,300 yards, 38 touchdowns, and just 26 interceptions. Mertz has the talent. We know he has the talent. We've seen it at times, but he's wildly inconsistent and was wildly inconsistent during his time in Madison in the Big Ten. The Gators' strength certainly going to be on the ground, where they averaged over 200 rushing yards per game last year, led by Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne, both returning this year. Leading wide receiver Ricky Pearsall is back as well. They have the talent there offensively, guys, although I will say the offensive line is a bit of a concern. A lot of inexperience up front. Not going to be good if they can't protect their quarterback. Not going to be good if they can't open up lanes for their running backs. But Florida's going to be a team that really wants to run more than anything else. Defensively, make the argument that's the strength for the Gators. 5 starters back on that side of the ball. Yes, they do lose their top 5 tacklers, but the front 7, Billy Napier believes, is going to be extremely strong, and I believe he's right. Cam Jackson and Caleb Banks both transferring into the program, going to bolster up that defensive line. Shamar James back at linebacker, only the top returning tackler, I should say, for Florida this year. This is a team that gave 175 rushing yards per game, 236 passing yards per game, but should improve drastically on both of those numbers. Florida, guys, again, we know the talent is there, but can it all come together? Some young talent, some inexperienced talent, can it come together to give the Gators a better record than they had last year? When you take a look at the schedule, it's tough, like we mentioned earlier. Opening up the year on a Thursday night at Utah. Go ahead and chalk it up as a loss, guys. Salt Lake City is no joke. It is not an easy place to play. The Utes, in fact, are 26-2 at home over the course of the last 5 years. Utah almost came into the swamp last year, fell 29-26 to the Gators. You know they're going to want revenge over Florida after taking that season opening loss. Cam Rising is back. The offense is going to be solid. The defense is going to maybe even be better than they were last year. That strong of a defense going up against an offense with a lot of questions, to me, doesn't bode well for the Gators, and especially with the game on the road, doesn't add any more faith to that. Florida drops the season opener to Utah, and I don't think it's going to be nearly as close as it was last year. They're 0-1. They're 1-1 with a win over McNeese. No worries there. Then they get their first conference game at home against Tennessee. They fell to the Volunteers 38-33 last year. Had a chance to maybe win it. At the end, Hail Mary just not panning out for the Gators at the final second. But 38-33, hang tough with the Volunteers. If anything, Florida got some great bulletin board material when Joe Milton recently came out and was like, hey, I don't lose in Florida. I don't lose in Florida. The Gators should be like, all right, let's see what you got. Come to Gainesville. See what you can do. Tennessee doesn't win in Gainesville. They just don't. Tennessee's lost? Lost like 9 straight games or something in Gainesville. They have not won back-to-back games against Florida since like 2003, 2004. The Gators have owned this series, guys. They've won 16 of the last 18 games. But it should be noted that Florida has lost 3 of their last 5 SEC home openers. It should be noted that Tennessee is once again loaded offensively with Joe Milton, their top 2 running backs returning. It should be noted that the Tennessee defense was severely underrated last year. And what was their strength defensively? It was stopping the run. What was their weakness? Stopping the pass. Florida and their quarterback situation, it doesn't give me any warm and fuzzy feelings that they're going to come out there and torch a team secondary regardless of how bad they are. I just don't see it happening. Maybe they exceed our expectations. I just don't see it happening. Tennessee's weakness might be their secondary. It's not going to be exploited against the Gators. They hone in on the run, which I believe they do. They win this game. Florida drops a game to Tennessee. A rare loss to the Volunteers, period, but an even rarer loss at home. They're 1-2. Make it 2-2 with the win against Charlotte. Now we head into the bulk of conference play. This is where the season is made. 2 losses. They're out of playoff contention. They weren't really in it to begin with. Right now, it's a matter of can we improve on last year's win total? Can we string together some victories, maybe contend for a solid bowl game? That is what Florida needs right now. They kick off the bulk of their conference play at Kentucky, team they lost to by 10 points last year at home. Beat Utah, went from unranked to number 12 in the country, and then fell laid an egg to the Wildcats, who have played extremely well against the Gators in recent years. And also, let's factor in that Florida, I don't want to say should have won that game last year against Kentucky by any means, but Anthony Richardson made some really, really bad and costly mistakes against Kentucky that completely changed the momentum of that game, and some could say cost Florida that game at home against the Wildcats. But you look at Kentucky this year, guys. 10 starters are back offensively. Devin Leary transfers in at quarterback from NC State. It's a major quarterback upgrade over Will Levis. This guy was phenomenal with the Wolfpack. He's going to be phenomenal with the Wildcats, I believe. The defense, traditionally very strong under Mark Stoops, allowing us a little over 140 rushing yards per game, only 171 passing yards per game. Florida's not going to be able to air it out much against the Wildcats. They're going to have to rely heavily on the run. Again, you load the box, you load the box, you load the box. You stop that run if you're Kentucky. Home field advantage plays a very big role here as well. The Wildcats get the win over the Gators. Florida is 2-3. They beat Vanderbilt, rest assured. They lost to Vanderbilt last year, and that was arguably the low point of the season. But I do think they bounce back in the Swamp. The Swamp, no matter how good or bad Florida is, it's a tough place to play. I don't care who you are. It's a tough place to play. And while Vanderbilt's certainly trending in the right direction, they do not have enough to win in the Swamp. And Billy Napier and the Gators are not going to allow that, especially with revenge on their mind after losing to the Commodores 31-24 last year. They get revenge. It's a weird thing to say, revenge over Vanderbilt. But they're 3-3, going on the road to South Carolina right before their bye week. And I think they enter their bye week with a losing record at 3-4. They fall to the Gamecocks. I know they won big last year. They won 38-6. South Carolina won big 2 years ago. The last time the game was in Columbia. Last year, Florida torched them, right? Outgained South Carolina 515 yards to 237 yards. It's unbelievable. It was an unbelievable performance. Over like almost 350 rushing yards in the game last year. It was a really dominating performance. But it should be noted that the road team, between the Gamecocks and Gators, the road team has lost 6 of the last 7. Shane Beamer is doing a phenomenal job with South Carolina. Spencer Rattler owns a significant quarterback edge here. South Carolina's secondary extremely solid. Again, what's their weakness? It's the running game. It's the run defense. If South Carolina can hone in on the run, slow it down, something they were unable to do last year, but if they can do that, I believe they win the game. And I believe South Carolina, getting a little bit of rest before this Florida game, comes in well prepared, making sure they don't make the same mistakes they did last year, which was being unable to stop the run. They slow it down a little bit more this year and get the win at home. So with that, Florida enters the bye week at 3-4. They get the bye week right before they play Georgia, which is great. Get the bye week right before you play your big rival. Good for you, but I don't know if anybody's going to beat Georgia this year. That's not a shot at Florida or anybody else. Georgia, the reigning national champions, back-to-back national titles, going for their third straight national title. It's loaded with talent once again. It's in Jacksonville, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It's great. I just don't know if Florida's going to be able to hang. An offense that has too many questions against one of the better defenses in all of college football, it's just not a great recipe for success. Florida tried to make it close last year, was getting torched like, 28-3, made it a 28-20 game. Kind of made it interesting. Georgia won 42-20 in the end. I would expect a roughly similar result this year. Florida then drops to 3-5. It's not looking good. 3-5 entering the month of November. They've got to win just 3 of their final 4 games to go bowling, and it's a tough slate to do so. It's a tough slate. But they kick off the month of November with a win. How about that? They beat Arkansas. Arkansas is one of those teams, guys, where, I think they have a lot of high expectations traditionally, typically fall short. And while Florida's not playing good ball, I think Arkansas is going to have a better record than Florida coming into this game. While you can make the argument that Florida's hung over from the loss to Georgia, this is a typical game where on paper Arkansas is the better team, but they're going to lose this game. And I feel very confident about that. The Swamp, it's a tough place to play. Arkansas's never won in the Swamp. Florida owns Arkansas. They are 10-2 against the Razorbacks with a handful of SEC titles in those wins as well. Arkansas, to me, owns the significant offensive advantage with KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders, but the defense, it's a bit of a concern. And the Razorbacks, while they had the worst passing defense in the country last year, they weren't all that great against stopping the run either. Factor in home field advantage, a strong Florida run game, and a Razorbacks team that's going to be wildly inconsistent this year. I think they drop this game to the Gators. Florida gets their 4th win of the year, and they keep the bowl hopes alive. They keep them alive. They go on the road to LSU. Typically, LSU and Florida, a fun matchup. Last year, no exception. LSU won by 10, but it was high scoring. It was high scoring, 45-35. But this Florida defense allowed 528 yards of offense to the Tigers, who ultimately went on to win the SEC West. Now you look at this year, coming into this game, LSU very well could be in the mix for the college football playoff this late in the year. Could be undefeated, could be a one-loss team. We don't know. But the Tigers are loaded with talent. Jaden Daniels returns. All their other top rushers return. They have a 1,000-yard receiver returning in Malik Neighbors. The defense is unbelievable. I mean, one of the better defenses in the country, and people aren't talking about it nearly enough. So you factor in Death Valley, that type of defense, this electric of an offense. I just don't see any path for Florida to win this game. They couldn't stop LSU last year when the Tigers were still trying to work out the kinks in their offense. That was kind of inconsistent at times. This year, the Tigers aren't going to have that issue, and the game is at home. So Florida drops the game to LSU. They've got to win their last 2 games to go bowling, just to get to a bowl game. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's not going to happen. They're not going to beat Missouri, and they're not going to beat Florida State. You go on the road to Missouri, back-to-back road games. It's not ideal. Missouri, a very, very good defense. 10 of their top 13 tacklers return. It was a very salty defense last year. Florida, I know, beat the Tigers last year 24-17, but it should be noted that the road team in this series has lost 3 straight games. The Tigers guys are good. They're not going to be necessarily SEC title contenders, but defensively they're very good. And when you factor in inconsistent quarterback play at Florida, questions offensively as a whole at Florida against this good of a Missouri defense with home field advantage on senior day for the Tigers, I just don't see them dropping this game. I do think it's close. I think the Gators kind of pull out all the stops this late in the year. No, they have nothing to lose. It's close. But I think they drop this game. I just don't see the offense having that much success against the defense. I just don't see it happening, which means they're 4-7 entering the season finale at home against Florida State. The Gators senior day, big time rivalry game. They weren't supposed to play Florida State as close as they did last year, and it ended up being a great game at the end of the year, losing 45-38. But the Seminoles guys, this could be their breakout year under Mike Norvell. Jordan Travis returns to lead an offense that averaged over 36 points per game. The defense allowed just 20.6 points per game. They allowed just 165 passing yards per game. 9 starters are back on the defensive side of the ball, a very underrated unit. This Florida State team is a legitimate ACC title contender. They're a legitimate college football playoff contender. It's an in-state rivalry game. Yes, Florida has this game at home. They technically own home field advantage to Swamp. Not an easy place to play. The game, Florida State, I expect to be a double-digit favorite possibly, will be decided by 1 possession. I think Florida gives it everything they've got. It's kind of like they did last year. Florida State, an over a 10-point favorite, ended up being only a 7-point game. We have a very similar outcome, but the Seminoles once again get this win. Florida State held the Gators to 198 passing yards last year. I don't think Florida tops that this year. I don't think that happens. They allowed 262 rushing yards to the Gators and still found a way to win. So Florida can have a huge day on the ground, but the Seminoles offense going to be one of the best in the country again. So with that, guys, I've got Florida going 4-8. And I hate it. I hate it. It feels weird having Florida be bad, having Florida be down, right? But you look at the schedule. I mean, there's so many unknowns with this Florida team. We know the talent's there. 4- and 5-star recruits. Billy Napier's recruiting well now, which means I think next year could be good. 2 years from now could be good if he can make it that long. We know Florida gives their coaches a relatively short leash. Dan Mullen, he got a pretty short leash, all things considered. 4-8, back-to-back losing seasons is not ideal. I don't know where they pick up any extra wins. Maybe they can get a win at Kentucky or South Carolina or Missouri. Those are the only ones I could see. So maybe, if you win 2 of those, you're going bowling. But the thing that Florida's going to win 8, 9, 10 games this year, it's just not in the cards. It's just not happening. It's going to take some time to build this program back up. Do I think Napier's the guy to do it? Yes. Look what he's doing on the recruiting trail right now. He can do it. But like we said at the beginning of the video, things may have to get worse in Gainesville before they can get better. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and of course, check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com, our Patreon account for exclusive college football content year-round. Join our Patreon Wall of Fame. Check out the mailing address down in the description below. Send us some gear to represent your team in every single Gridiron Expert video. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.